Hello, and today we're looking at control of biotic features in a habitat. So any species in a habitat is going to rely on other species, and we call this interdependence. So they might directly rely on another species for food, or it might be slightly less direct. So they rely on a species to control abiotic factors, or provide shelter, or some sort of ecosystem service. So the first one then is food. So food needs to be provided for a species so that it can survive. So a predator will need a prey species to be able to eat. So this might be a lynx eating snowshoe hares, but typically they will not rely on one species, they will rely on several species. So it might have deer, mice, different types of bird species, all making up its diet. So if one is absent, there is the opportunity to have something else. In addition, they need to avoid interspecies competition. So an example of this is, if I just write that down, interspecies competition needs to be avoided. And they will typically have adaptations that help them avoid this. So we have different bird species developing different shaped beaks so that they can access different types of food more effectively and have their own niche. Okay, so here's some finches. This eats seeds because it's got a strong seed breaking beak. You've got one that eats more insects because it's got like a long, thin, pointy beak for picking them out. And this one's got a crossed over bill for eating pine cones. So an example of this would be something like finches or wading birds or something like that. So they will have a specific adaptation that helps avoid interspecies competition. And they might have defenses against becoming food. And this might be things like bad tastes, toxins, thorns, or camouflage. So some examples of things like poison dart frogs, or in the UK you have cinnabar moths. Double N, that always helps. The cinnabar moth you can always tell because it's this long caterpillar with this amazing like orangey, yellow and black stripes, and that tells you that it's got a poison from the plant it eats. So it eats ragwort, which has a toxin in that burns cattle mouths, and it takes in that poison and becomes toxic for other things to eat, and it signals that toxin by being bright yellow and black. So control of predation. So providing safe nesting sites for ground nesting birds might help prevent them being eaten. So and we can do this by culling predators. We might exclude them. by fences or an island, so it's surrounded by water, and that'll keep terrestrial things, predators away. You might need to trap and remove. And this would help provide this sort of safe location. So an example of this is where islands in the ocean are visited by humans who introduce rats. And the problem with the rats is they will eat literally anything up to and including ground nesting birds. So endemic bird species that nest on the ground, they could be seabirds that visit there seasonally or they live there all year round, become prey for the rats, or their eggs do. So a good example of this is something like the Scilly Isles. Some of the offshore islands are important nesting sites for seabirds, like the Manx shearwater. Rats were introduced accidentally and predated on the nestlings and eggs of Manx shearwaters, and they were controlled through poison and monitoring and bait to control their population and eradicate them. As a consequence, the population of Manx shearwaters and their nesting success has increased. Control of competitors. So we might be looking at removing or controlling a competitor. So an example of this is rhododendrons in UK woodland, and these are an introduced species of plant that the Victorians introduced, and it's an evergreen, and it grows in sort of a low shrub, and it comes. It's because it's evergreen, it blocks out all of the light that would otherwise penetrate down to the forest floor, and this means that it outcompetes bluebells. So they outcompete them for light. And so we need to remove these so that we can have our bluebells growing again in the spring, where they take advantage of the fact that the deciduous trees have no leaves, and they can access the light in the very early spring and then complete their life cycle before the light is all blocked out. With the rhododendrons being there, they wouldn't have been able to do that because they're evergreens.